Welcome back to Out of the Fold. If you haven't listened to part 1 of my interview with William, please do so before listening to this one. No religious organizations, companies, or individuals were contacted for comment about any of the content of this episode. The views expressed are strictly those of the ones expressing them. I started by asking William if he was close with anyone that knew how seriously he was questioning Islam.
My family didn't really, because it's a shame, it's an embarrassment. They didn't really want this idea to leave the household because it makes them feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
So like they were not good parents. They were not good religious parents to bring up somebody who appreciates the religion and tradition. My aunts, my mother's sisters, they're not very religious. Also, like soon after they got married, a couple of them, I have a big family. When I say a couple of my aunts, I have like 5 aunts and 3 uncles on my mother's side only.
Mm-hmm.
So it's huge. And each of them have on average 3 kids. So it's a lot. So they used to, like when I said my mom is more liberal in that sense. So my mom used to take us to like outside of the city, and my aunts would sit in the car like a lot of people. It's not safe, I understand, but there are no rules in Iran about like how many people you can fit in the car.
Right.
As much as you can say, that's fine. That's the excitement that matters. And we would go on trips to outside of the city where it's less populated. It's more of a, like it's desert, and it's like, and there are no police around. So my mom had friends who would smuggle out from abroad into the country cassettes of like Iranian singers or some English music that like at that time was modern talking, Michael Jackson, and they wouldn't understand the lyrics, and I really didn't know that much English that I could like keep up with the pace, but songs like it's in my head right now, You're my heart, you're my soul, la 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 la, which was You are my heart, you are my soul, whatever it was. And we would sing it, and we would like be loud, and they would take off their hijabs, and they were like blowing their hair in the wind, and they were happy and all of that. So with that circle, I was comfortable sharing my political ideology, my religious ideology. I wasn't comfortable enough to share them about my interest in Judaism, but I would question Islam in front of them, and we would have discussions. And my aunts are very, I don't want to put very liberal, but they're understanding. They are accepting and understanding. And when we were with our own circle, we would talk about things, and we would make sure that these conversations wouldn't leave the room. And they also are a very huge spectrum. They have a huge spectrum of political opinions, and some of them would agree, some of them would disagree. We had like very good conversations. But I was not able to have that conversation with my parents or with my mother or grandparents. So that was limited to, family-wise, that was limited to that circle. Among my friends, there were a couple of, or maybe a few high school friends who knew specifically about my interest in Judaism, who like also asked me questions, or like, oh, tell me more about like, what is this? What is that? They would ask me about questions, and I would like talk to them, and I would give them the very limited information that I had from Jews, and they would be fascinated by it. I wanted to also tell you something about periods. So periods are like things to be ashamed of.
Right.
Girls should be embarrassed. This is not a good thing. And as far as I know, the religious law says when a woman is in her period, one, they're not allowed to participate in religious services, so they're exempt in a sense from saying prayers 5 times a day during that period, which is fun for them. Less prayers for them. It's a lot. Secondly, they're not allowed to enter a mosque because they are quote unquote unclean, which
Right.
is disgusting because they don't understand what happens in the womb, that like it's preparing that organ for life. How can you
Right.
call it disgusting? How can you call it this is unclean?
Right.
I So we didn't know anything about periods. Like I'm sure girls didn't know about it either, but as boys, we know nothing about it. We had no idea what this is. And time to time, my father, like I would run into arguments with my mom, like, Mom, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And she was not in the mood to talk to me. And because she was in her periods later on, I discovered, and my father would be like, your mom has a headache. Your mom has a stomach. Don't talk to her. And I'm like, how come you're always sick? Like every month for a week you're sick. What's going on? Maybe you should see a doctor. So they'd never talked to me about it. And I'm very embarrassed about that because it was very harsh on that because I didn't understand that notion and nobody talked to me about it. And it was just sad that why don't you tell your kids that this is what a woman is going through and it's painful. Don't I don't get it. It's just that extreme ideology that sees it, that looks at it as something disgusting, something that's clean, that needs to be kept in a secret.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring that up. Yeah, because I've talked about that with a few of my guests before. Sex education, and
Hmm.
it's something in the Bible, or how people interpret the Bible as well. That if a girl has her period, she needs to be isolated for that time. But what's interesting from what I'm hearing, what you're saying about Tehran with their view of Islam. With Sharia law, I mean, there are some very violent parts of the Bible as well. I mean, there were tons of things that Moses said that people deserve to be stoned for. But Judaism and Christianity have sort of moved away from that for the most part. And it sounds as though in the Quran, those parts of it that were about punishment and violent punishment to that degree, that there just hasn't been as much reform in Islam as there have been in other religions yet.
That's correct. As I mentioned, is in this era of time that they are taking everything um, by its word, taking everything literally. And as you mentioned, Bible is also the Torah and the Bible both are also violent in some sense cases.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. And this week, this past Shabbat, I was spending the time with the community, and we were reading the Torah, and I read one part that that if they were making some sort of spice, I forget, and it's like if that person who's making this spice makes a mistake and doesn't add this and that, they're liable to the punishment of death. And I'm like, holy shoe, really?
Yeah. Oh wow,
But
yeah.
we don't practice that. That's the only difference. We don't exercise
Right.
those things. Yes, I understand it, but we have come to this conclusion, understanding that we're living in this world. We need to get along with everybody. We can't do that.
Hmm.
We can't. But Islam is in that era of taking everything literally and wanting to exercise that. And uh, there are also other things that other people said that are also banned in their religion, or it's in extreme form. And one of them is alcohol, which was very interesting to me. That also Mormons don't drink alcohol, and evangelical Christians don't drink alcohol, and they consider it really, really bad.
Hmm.
So in Islam, historically, I think Islam used to permit consumption of alcohol, but it changed throughout time. I don't know what the exact story is, but from what I know, is like there was three phases to prohibition, and they stopped it eventually. And right now, it's like alcohol is absolutely banned, and even a single drop of alcohol, if you consume one single drop of alcohol on purpose, intentionally, and willingly, the there is a punishment for that. First of all, so physically you're going to be like punished, which I believe is like um, uh, it's not stoning. It's a little bit more humane. It's not stoning. It's they give you lashes. So you're not gonna die, but you get publicly lashed for consuming alcohol. The other aspect of it is religiously. So when someone drinks alcohol, no matter what amount, they are not allowed to say prayers. Man or woman, just doesn't matter. For 40 days, they're not allowed to say prayers. And then after that 40 days, they will be able to say prayers, but they have to make up for it. So it's like 10 times a day, go say your prayers. And I didn't consume alcohol, of course, growing up, or when I was a teenager, or when I was older. I didn't have the possibility to go to a store and show my ID and get a six pack of beer or buy wine or whatnot, because it's prohibited. And after 1979, they burnt all the liquor stores. They tore them down. They attacked them.
Mm-hmm.
But alcohol exists in Iran underground. It's like black market. You can purchase alcohol. Very expensive, of course. But if you're a little bit more technologically advanced, you can set up your own brewery and either brew beer or make arak, which is a very, very strong sort of maybe vodka, I think. Also, if you have access to grapes, sugar, and yeast, you can make your own wine. So I was at some point in my life, I was making date wine. I was making wine out of dates, which was interesting, and it was quite a great experience. Very elevating. And I started when I went to college in Iran. I started working with an organization. It was an international organization that would send students abroad for volunteer experiences and international exchange. And so I traveled a lot with that organization. I went to Armenia, I went to Georgia, I went to Poland, I went to Italy, I went to Germany, and I came to the US also for one of my trips because I was representing the organization at the United Nations headquarters. We had close relations with the UN, and we were trying to align our projects with the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So being abroad meant for me to learn more, practice more, study more about Judaism, and also drink alcohol, which I could do, which I couldn't do in Iran. So
right.
That was a blessing. And also, the first time that I consumed alcohol was okay. Let me like flashback a little bit and then talk about the alcohol thing because it's connected to another story.
That's fine.
As I said, I was not able to continue my education in Germany because my father did not allow that. In fact, he intervened in the process without me knowing initially, and then later I found out that he had told the people or the group that gave me a test to enter school system in Germany to fail me so that I'm not qualified to travel to Germany and to continue my education there. So that meant that I stayed in Iran. That meant that I went to high school in Iran. And in 2009, when Ahmadinejad was elected president for his second term, people were upset. And they were chanting some familiar chants that people might be familiar in the U.S. with. They're like, "Not my president," things like that,
Yeah.
because they thought that the election was rigged. I mean, the elections are rigged, all of them, at a scratch. There are no free elections. But in that particular case, people who voted for the other candidate thought that their candidate, the election was rigged and their candidate did not win because of that. So they came to the streets, peacefully protesting the 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 whole system. And it's been 30 years. At that time, it's been 30 years, and by now it's like 40 years that they have been ruling this country, and they're ruining it by ruling it. So the protests turned violent, and I was participating in the protests because I had very high hopes in like overthrowing the regime, because I thought maybe if we do this, half of the population could be free. Like women could be free to choose what they want to wear. Maybe we could have the minority groups, which are the Baha'is, then they could go to school, because the Baha'is are not considered a religion, and therefore they cannot go to school. They don't allow them to go to school or have businesses. And I thought maybe I can be Jewish. Maybe I can openly exercise my Judaism at that time. So that was the reason, that was the motivation that I participated in all of that, the uprising alongside with the rest of college students and other young people. And it was very violent. It turned violent very quickly because of the lack of tolerance in the regime. And they started shooting people as, I think it was 17, 18-year-old. And I was witnessing all of this. I heard gunshots. It was my first time. I saw people dying in the street. I saw people getting shot, and it was shocking. It was like a lot to consume. And I got depressed because the so-called revolution failed, and it didn't work well. And me being depressed meant a lot, because I had tried so much to obtain my rights to become who I wanted to be. First, with the first incident that my thoughts were taken away from me. Second, with that awful experience in that awful place. Third, with my father not letting me leave the country. And now with this failed revolution, what am I going to do? I lost all my hopes. I dropped out of high school, and I told my parents that I can't live in that environment anymore. I need space. I need space to breathe, to just think about my future, about what's going on with me. And my mother was the first person to agree on this. And I said, I want to leave this house. I want to leave this city. I want to go as far as I can. I picked a place on the map, which is about 1,000 miles south of Iran. In the Gulf, there are a lot of islands, a lot of beautiful islands, because it's coral. It's connected to the Indian Ocean. It's beautiful. The beaches are shiny and are golden. The water is like green, bluish. It's beautiful. I picked that island, and I told them that I'm going to move here. That island is Kish, Kish. It's a very beautiful place. Magical. It's a paradise. And I told them that I'm going to move there. I'm going to settle my mind, my body, my soul, my thoughts, and everything. I just want to be away. My mom convinced my dad to accept this, because she was more lenient. She was more accepting. And she wanted me to be who I wanted to be. Not in that sense, you know what I'm saying? She wanted to be more, less strict on me. And so I moved there, and my mom would come visit me twice a week. My dad's a lawyer. he got new cases to 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 work there, and then he enrolled in college, not in college, in graduate studies. He started going to school there as well, and so that they had this partial presence in the island, and then the rest of their life was in Iran. Well, was in Tehran. I'm sorry, and there I had much more freedom to express myself, to to learn. I would go online on Jewish websites and I would learn more about Jewish traditions, Jewish holidays and practices and history. And it's a rich island in nature, and I had a very nice schedule. I would wake up early in the morning, go swimming, kayaking, riding my bike, and then I decided to finish my high school. So I enrolled in night school because I was older and I couldn't go to regular school. I was non-traditional because I had dropped out and I didn't go to school for I think a year or two, and it was very peaceful.
That sounds amazing.
It was beautiful. I mean, if you Google pictures of Quiche, you will get what I'm talking about. Just compare Quiche with Tehran, and you'll get what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so in Quiche, back to the topic of alcohol, it was the first time that I consumed alcohol because I had friends who had access to illegal alcohol, and we would drink. And there was this guy who would brew his own vodka in a sense, and they would I don't think it's vodka, it's alcohol out of raisins. So I don't know what it is exactly. Anyway, so that was the first time that I had that I tasted alcohol, and it was bitter. I think that's a fact. And yeah, I had that little freedom up until I graduated from high school, and the whole thing happened with me having to move back to Tehran because I enrolled in college. And as I mentioned, the capital has everything. The capital has all the resources. So everything is like centralized in the capital. Good universities, good hospitals, good doctors, good surgeons, good education, good food, good public transportation. I mean, when I say good public transportation, I don't really mean the MTA in New York City, although
Right.
we have a love-hate relationship with it as New Yorkers, but still, we take it for granted in New York.
Yeah.
And so everything was centralized in Tehran. It's the focus. All the public and private sector companies, all the political figures live in Tehran. All the political buildings are in Tehran. If you have a major court case, you have to come to Tehran. It's like, but they didn't really think of like expanding or spreading out major places in the country. But anyway, and I had to move back to Tehran. I enrolled in a public school, and public schools in Iran are much better in quality and are for free, but private schools are very expensive and are not really good in quality. Like if somebody goes to a public school, they have a better chance of, like, if somebody studies mathematics or engineering in a public school in Iran, they have a very high chance of getting into MIT, or if they study in Harvard University, which is a public school, they study political science, they have a very good chance of getting to Harvard Law. So that's how it works.
Wow.
Yeah, because the quality in those schools are very high. I mean, they're not comparable to the US. They're not really top 50 or top 100 even. But compared to the other schools in the country, if somebody goes to a private school, I don't think they can get admission to any other country. It's going to be very difficult for them. They have to prove them so much in their essays, in their projects that they're gonna show to the college that they're applying to. But anyway, I moved back to Tehran. I moved back with my parents, and I started working with the organization that I was talking about. And I also met this girl. We had met prior to that. We met online like every other millennial. But it's also, you have to understand that it's also very rare for people to meet online. And it's very looked down on to meet people online. And it's like, it's a no-no. Of course, there are no dating apps. So online dating is not a thing. It's more traditional. It's like family would introduce people to each other and like, okay, get married. That's it. And some people have like settled marriages since they were born. They're like, you're going to marry your second cousin. That's it. Deal. You get to 18 years of age, boom, let's do it. You find a job, let's do it. You graduate from school, let's do it. Yeah. Oh, something about schools that I forgot to mention, that after 1979, women could not go to school. Women who were married, I'm sorry, because they needed written permission from the husband. So my mother went to school because my grandfather allowed her to go to, and he gave her permission. She was going to school with this lady that they grew up with in some sense, and they went to high school together. And they're about to graduate from high school, last year of high school, junior year of high school, that my mom's friend got married. And she knew the consequences of that. She will be kicked out of school. So she kept it a secret. She wouldn't wear her ring. But eventually, the principal and the administration of the school finds out. And sadly, before graduation, she was kicked out of school because she was married. She never continued going to school. She never went to college. She became that house mother. And I remember her because we grew up with her daughter. My mom was very close with her. And yeah, that was something that I wanted to mention about schools. And even right now, if a husband does not allow his wife to go to school or to go to college, that college would not enroll that woman. Women cannot enroll without a written permission from a male guardian, which is father, brother, grandfather, or the husband, whatever that is. So when we met online, when I met this girl online, it was very like a no-no if I wanted to like open this case up to people that this is how we met. And after, I think about like a few months of online sort of talking to each other on Facebook, and that's how we met. We met with like, we were like, my name has always been William. My name was not William when I was born, but my name on social media and among my cousins and aunts who were understanding was always William. My grandfather used to call me the William Shakespeare of the family because of my good command of English or whatever. And so I always adopted it like as my name. That sure, cool, I'm William then. So that's how I'm named William. So my name was also William on social media on Facebook. And this girl that we met online, we engaged in debates on religion, Islam, Islamic Republic, this country, politics, and everything. And that's how we initially met. And when she was living at that time in India, because her father, who works for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Iran, was a diplomat and working for them. They were stationed in New Delhi in India. And when she moved back to Tehran with her whole family as the mission ended, we started dating in person. We started having the same debates in person. Like I would bring up religion like Judaism, Israel. She would bring up Islam and everything else. Eventually, we became more, more intimate. And she confessed to me something that she's secular and she has to brush up this face of a Muslim because of her parents, because of her dad's job title and where he works, her her family's level of religiosity and all of that. And I was like, boom, I found somebody that I share something with. This is great. And I confessed to her the same way that this is also my secret, my deep, dark secret, that I want to be Jewish. So we came to this conclusion, in fact, that us being together, we being together means that we're gonna build this bubble that we can be whoever we want to be in it, and outside of it we can pretend to be Muslims. But there was one problem. We needed, and that meant we wanted to get married. And that problem that I mentioned was that we had met online, and as I said, it was not a good reason to marry someone, no matter how religious they or their family are. Their family is. So we're looking for this matchmaker that we eventually found them, and then that matchmaker introduced the families, and they were like, hey, I have this person that is very religious and would be a good match for your son. And my mom was like she lost it. She was like, wow, this is great. This definitely matches my son, and we're gonna be proud to have this girl as our bride. So my dad was happy, her family were happy. It was like a match made in heaven, in a sense, because of the level of religiousness and the level of the similar political views that both families had. Mm-hmm. But nobody knew about the real reason behind this, of why we're doing this. So we did eventually get married. It was in 2015. The anniversary is coming up next year. It was in January. And but we really hadn't thought about it carefully. So like, what are the different aspects of our life and that we're going to be dealing with? What are the things we want to show to the others? What are the things we don't want to show, we want to hide? What are we going to do with this? How are we going to manage this? Are we going to leave? Where are we going to go? Are we going to have kids? How are we going to raise the kids? What are we going to name the kids? How are we going to educate them? What are we going to teach them? These are all questions that came after the job was done.
Yeah.
Things that we had to ask before. But we continued going with it. She gave me the space to have a semi-kosher kitchen that allowed my religious observance. I had like Shabbat, the Sabbath candles that I would light every Friday night. And we made a pilgrimage trip to a Jewish religious site in Iran. And life seemed good, but a lot of problems came on and on. We had a lot of issues. And it was very difficult to keep it a secret. And eventually she lost it. She wanted a divorce, and we couldn't live with that. And I wanted a divorce too, because it wasn't really working out. It wasn't something that we envisioned. So we needed to get out of it. But we needed to think about it, like, how are we going to do it? What are we going to tell our parents? Islam really prohibits divorce. It's like, no, why do you want to do it? This was a bond that is meant to be forever. Why are you breaking it? It's not that difficult to get a divorce. There are criteria. I mean, of course, for a man, it's not that difficult. A man could do it easily in probably a week, but for a woman, it's very difficult. She wanted to do it, and I wanted some time, but she decided that this was over. And one day when we were at her mother's, we had an argument. The argument got very loud, and her mother intervened, and she knew nothing. She knew nothing about these arguments. She knew nothing about these fights, these disagreements, these thoughts, in a sense. And when she said, she shouted out loud that this guy is not even Muslim. This guy is Jewish. It was like, for one hot second, it was that relief, that excitement that somebody saw something in me that I saw myself. But then, right after that, it came the thought and the consequences of it, which, according to the Sharia, apostasy is punishable by death. It was very interesting for me when I was listening to the other episode about that person. I forget his name. He was an ex-Mormon, and he was saying that everything that is against Mormonism is apostasy.
Yeah.
You mentioned that this is such an extreme word to use, and it's very, it's true, it's an extreme word to use, but it also exists in other extremist religions or extremist beliefs.
Yeah.
And yeah, apostasy, meaning leaving Islam for either nothing or something else, like either becoming an atheist or becoming a Christian, a Mormon, an evangelical, a Jew, Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, doesn't matter, or becoming an agnostic, or becoming whatever other than Islam, is punishable by death. It's a sad reality of this moment. So I knew that that's the end of it. I knew that this is it. Her mother threatened me with the same rhetoric that we're gonna punish you, we're gonna hang you, inshallah. I mean, they don't shoot people anymore. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. They hang people, but I remember when I was a child, as I said, I was born about 3 years after the war ended, and it was probably 13, is it 13? 79, 13 years after the revolution, so everything was fresh still. And maybe it was 6 or 5, I don't remember. I was very young, that I was sitting on my mother's lap when we were driving in the car, when I saw somebody hanging from a crane, from a construction machine. Whatever crime that person had committed, whatever that person was, that image stuck with me and always was in my head. Although my mom tried to cover my eyes, cover my face, but I saw it. And because I was very young, that image was printed in my memory. And the minute her mom said, "We will hang you, inshallah," that image came to life. But instead of that man hanging up there, it was me hanging up there. And
oh my God.
It was very difficult. It was very hard to deal with. And all I could think of was that I need a way out. I just need to leave. Immediately what they did was to lock the door of their apartment. They took away my belongings, which I had just my backpack, my phone, whatever I had. And they called my parents. And I think that was the worst part to me, because my parents had found out when they called them, they had found out that I had lied to them for the past decade and something, for the past few years. And I knew what they are going to do, and I knew that they are going to either put me back to that religious asylum, or they're going to be fine with these people killing me because they feel like they have been betrayed. And I just couldn't see myself in that situation. It was just very difficult. So I was looking for this moment, and that moment came. I was looking for a moment to escape, and that moment came when my parents arrived. And this is happening in early in the morning or late at night. It's after midnight for sure, but it's 1, 2 a.m., somewhere around then. And when they unlocked the door, when they opened the door for my parents to come in, to start yelling at them or talk to them of like uh what a disgrace I am to them, to my parents, to the world, to this country, to whatever. I just grabbed my stuff, my belongings, and I pushed. It was either her mom or her sister, whoever it was, and I pushed my parents out of the door and just ran out. All I could think of that I just need to leave is just need to run as far as I can. Where I'm going, I have no idea. What I'm doing, I do not know. I got into my car and I drove as fast as I could back to my apartment. And I could see all the speed cameras flashing in my back mirror. And I think I left a lot of debt on my family with all those tickets. But it's funny when I'm thinking about that, but I got to my apartment, to the apartment that I used to live with my ex-wife, and then I started packing things. And we had two suitcases so it's a custom that when the couple gets married, I don't think it's an Islamic custom. It's more of a Persian traditional custom that the family of the bride, whatever the bride's family buys is for the groom, and whatever the groom's family buys is for the bride. So the toiletry for the man was bought by her mom, and the toiletry for me was bought. But you get the idea. Well, they also bought two suitcases for us. We wanted them to be the same brand, and so same like shape and everything. So we had to buy the same brand, the same thing, but different sizes. Her parents got the smallest one, so that was 9, and my parents got the bigger size, that was hers. I remember when I was back to the apartment and I wanted to pack stuff, I was like, which one should I choose? The bigger one that I can fit more stuff into it and it's not mine, or the smaller one that is ethically right and that's mine? I don't want to steal things from people.
Oh, God, man.
And I took the smaller one, and I had very limited space to fit all my clothing. And I didn't start with my clothing. I started with my religion. I started with the Hanukkah, the menorah that I had for Hanukkah, and I started with some religious books that I had that were Hebrew. I packed my kippah and whatever that was connected to my Judaism, I packed it, and then the rest I filled with clothing. It was in September. It was cold, so I knew I didn't know where I'm gonna go. I didn't know how long I'm gonna be in where, but I knew it's gonna be cold, so I packed warm clothing. When it was opening the safe to get my documents like passport, birth certificate, or whatever document that I needed, I found her documents. I found out that her documents were missing, so I figured that she had taken her own documents prior to this whole thing. Also, the safe that we used to keep the gold, the savings, the dollars, and whatever money that they had saved up was also empty. She had taken all of that. And later on, I found out that she had a plan to end that marriage that day, but it turned like aggressive and violent, and things escalated too quickly that happened. Maybe she didn't really had the intention of doing that. I don't know. But then I had just $200 that I had my own savings in another place, in a separate place that I took. And because I was traveling a lot with that organization that I had worked for, that I was still working for, so I knew a lot of people, and I had a lot of friends in neighboring countries, Turkey, Armenia, Georgia, and also abroad, like Poland, a lot. it was an international organization, so I had met a lot of internationals throughout my time in that organization.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that I thought was that I can go to Armenia because I have been there so many times. I had been there 4 times already, and I know how to get there, and I know the Yerevan, the city. I have a lot of friends. I might be able to ask them to find me a job to earn a little bit more. I might ask them to help me with housing or whatever. So that was the first place that I went to. I drove to the bus stop, and I texted my brother where I parked my car. I boarded the bus that same day, and in less than 10 hours, I was out of the country. And also, when I was at the border, this border control police officer asked me, what is the purpose of your travel? That's a common question that they ask them. Why are you leaving the country? Where are you going? Who are you going with? What is that? He asked me, like, what is the purpose of your trip? Why are you leaving the country? And I said, it's a matter of life and death. I was sincere in that. He was kind enough to wish me the best of luck, and he stamped my passport, and I left that day. And I was kind of relieved, and I was relieved. Yeah, I got to relative safety, far from my overprotective parents, far from my extremist ex-wife family, and eventually I contacted friends in the U.S. and they told me to come to the U.S. and I ended up in the U.S. and yeah, it was a journey that started at a young age, and it's still ongoing. I'm still discovering things, and I'm still fighting extremism in whatever shape or form, in whatever religion it is, and whatever belief it is. Even if you drink water like every 1 hour you drink water, you're gonna die because it's a lot of water. I know our body is consistent, but like majority of our body is water, and we need to keep hydrated. We die if we don't drink it more than 3 days. But again, if you drink a lot of it, you'll die.
Right.
Something that is so good, you'll die out of extremism for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think religion by itself or the concepts of God by itself is bad. It's just that idea of extremism. Don't take it to the extreme level. Somebody who, whatever, I could go on and give different examples, not religion, but different examples of being extreme. If somebody is like extremely organized, yeah, that might be good, but you can develop ADHD out of that. Being organized is good, but being too organized is something that is not okay.
OCD, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely
right.
right.
OCD, I apologize. Right, yeah.
So your story is amazing. Like what you just described as what happened in Tehran and what got you over here. I mean, that all is that's absolutely incredible that that you survived all that and made your way over here. I mean, really. Is there like the equivalent of I don't know if this is the right term for what it would be over there, but like is there like the equivalent of like a warrant out for you in Tehran then? Like if you were to go back, would you be arrested and charged with apostasy and executed? I mean, is that how it works?
Yes. So my ex had to go and apply for and request a divorce. And again, because she's a woman, it doesn't really work in her favor unless she has some solid ground.
Right.
And the one and only solid ground that she had was apostasy, which makes the marriage invalid because a Muslim woman, is not allowed to marry a non-Muslim man. And according to Sharia, because Islam needs to be always the dominant part, the dominant wing. So a Muslim man can marry a non-Muslim woman because The man is the head of the household. He's in charge. He's in power. But a Muslim woman cannot do that. So the court ruled in her favor, and we got divorced based on that, and she was able to remarry. But there was another aspect to that besides that private request from my ex-wife. There was also this public aspect to it, that I was an apostate. So there isn't a like big warrant out there that they publicize it, that like every Muslim is obligated to find this guy. You know, Salman Rushdie. So when he received his, when we say he received, it's like as if it's a medal or it's a championship of some sort. When he received his death warrant from the Ayatollahs in Iran because he wrote the book, the book Satanic Verses, that was a public warrant issued by the supreme leader of Iran, stating that this guy is an infidel, he's an apostate, his blood needs to be spilled by any Muslim anywhere in the world they find him, and his life was in jeopardy. There is no such thing in my case, but as an apostate in general, yes. If I go back, if I'm sent back, that is what's going to happen. Because let's be fair. They're going to give me options. They're going to give me the option of the book or the sword.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Just to do just to them.
Huh. Wow. So when I first contacted you, you said something that I really respected a lot. You said that we were talking about the fact that a lot of the guests on my show have been non-theists. You know, they've been or non-theists. They've been atheist, agnostic for the most part. You're actually the first guest that I've had who's left one religion for another, and I'm so glad that you wanted to come on my show. But I perceived that there would be a lot of people that would be a little bit uncomfortable being associated with something like that. But you actually said that you welcome, skepticism, questioning, criticism of religion as a whole. Have you found that in Judaism? Have you found that a lot of the people that you've spoken to that are Jewish, and from what you understand about the Torah, that criticism of your beliefs is actually seen as a good thing?
Yes. So one of the fascinating things about Judaism that interested me was this idea that you are not only you're allowed to question things, you have to ask questions, because it's not something that you need to be force-fed. You need to learn. And Judaism has a lot of different sects, and it has its own extremism within its own. And in modern orthodoxy, when there is this saying that let's talk about this a certain subject, and if I cannot answer your question, let's sit together and flip through the book or flip through the books and find an answer for it. And even if we cannot find an answer, let's just settle down and just agree to disagree. So this is something fascinating about Judaism that I associate with, and I'm like, I can question things. And if I have a question, my question is going to have an answer. And even if there is no written answer, we can sit down and search for it. But in Islam, questioning is not allowed. Mm-hmm. But again, as I mentioned, extremism exists in every religion, in every belief, and in every society. And there are also Jewish sects that are extreme that I do not associate with. And I am very open to speaking with people who disagree with religion and its own, and who I don't talk to them when I talk to them, I don't talk to them based on the Torah or based on my beliefs, because I do not impose my beliefs to anybody else. I do not think somebody who doesn't believe in the Torah, even a Jewish person who doesn't believe in the Torah, needs to sit down with me and argue with me based on those facts. No, they can have their own facts. I don't think that I should impose anything on people. And that is something that fascinates me about Judaism, that it doesn't impose itself on others.
I put a link to one of the websites for the Muslim Reform Movement in the description of this episode. I'd really like you to check them out. There are millions of Muslims who are using the Quran to advocate for peace, human rights, and secular government. For the most part, they don't have a different interpretation of Islam than that of extremists. They just elevate different parts, just like how the vast majority of even the most fundamental Jews and Christians still wouldn't promote executing adulterers, even though it's prescribed to do so in Leviticus. These episodes marked a turning point for my show. I originally planned on speaking with people who identified themselves as no longer being associated with the theology. But when I found William, I realized I was doing a disservice to people who left one religion for another at great expense. Not to mention that religion is a somewhat subjective word. Sometimes I hear the way fellow atheists talk, and there's so much rhetoric that it sounds dogmatic. I truly hope that by welcoming more people like William on my show, there may be some unity between apostates who have left religion entirely or left one for another. Also, if you know people who are questioning their beliefs, ask them how they're doing, and mean it. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review and share it with someone you trust. For immediate updates and discussions, follow the show on Twitter @OutfoldPodcast. Special thanks to William for approving all of this conversation being shared. Logo and artwork by my wife. Production by my wife and I. All music by me. Once again, Happy New Year. See you next week. This has been Out of the Fold.